Hello and welcome to Florida Basketball Hour. I am Neil Blackman, Saturday Down South. This is a segment I did last year when in Nashville that was quite popular. So live from the SEC tournament. It's Friday. It's quarterfinal Friday. Always good to get on the agenda. Actually going to kill this light because it's freaking out my screen. So give me just a second. This is going to go to Patreon. I will drop it on the pod as well. But it'll start as a Patreon and then it'll go to the pod in a little bit. But anyway, exclusive Patreon content for our Rowdy Reptile and 6-man crew members. So bear with me while I shut a light off real quick. Okay. So what I just wrote an article for Saturday Down South that I submitted. It'll be up in a minute. I think the greatest SEC tournament Thursday ever. 4 games, 3 decided by 9 points total. 2 of those games involved buzzer beaters, Sean Padua's triple, and the Onions to make that 3, man, after going 0 for 6 from the floor. Like, just the sheer onions that it took to get that bucket out. Give me a break, man. Unbelievable stuff. I thought that was incredible. The second game, Texas A&M, Texas, might have been the best game of the day. Goes to double overtime. Obviously, I think, no question in my mind that Texas, whether they deserve to be in the NCAA tournament now or they're getting close to kind of being in the NCAA tournament, you can debate that. Those things are fair to kind of discuss, I think. But for me, the reality is they're probably in Dayton right now. Now, does that mean they're going to be in Dayton? No. I mean, I still think you've got some bid thieves that are still lurking. Although, I don't think we're headed for 5 bid thieves like we had last year. It looks like that number's going to be smaller. I wouldn't even characterize North Carolina as a bid thief yet. We'll see what happens if Duke can win the ACC tournament without Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown. I think it's going to be a tall order against the Desperate Heels team tonight, but we'll see. But there are bid thieves lurking, and certainly if Texas is in that last 4 in group headed to Dayton at 19 and 14, it's always possible that they could get knocked out still. So I don't think that anything is guaranteed there, and I'm just going to get this link out real quick. All right. Anyway, so that game was absolutely redonkulous, and I gotta say, like, there's some things I thought were pretty fascinating in this game. One was the fact that, like, Zurich Phelps played 39 minutes at a -11, and like Buzz just didn't take him off the floor, and it was like clear to me that Manny Obaseki was having the better game, and that they didn't necessarily need Wade. They didn't need another ball handler. Like, Wade Taylor was fine. Jace Carter was not very good either. So they didn't just have the guards. Like, I would have played bigger and sort of trusted Garcia, maybe trust Hayden Hefner, who guards at least, and gone with Manny O, because he was clearly the hot hand, 17 points. Something about Nashville. He was plus 14, which was actually the game high in that game. Like, to me, I thought that was just weird from Buzz to not go with kind of another option when Zurich was just having such a tough one. But Wade Taylor, the 4th, draws the 13 fouls. I didn't look to see whether that was an SEC record or not. I know he shot 18 free throws, which I think was top 5 all time at the SEC tournament. He made 17 of them. Just a fantastic game by 4. But obviously he misses the driving layup that they could have won the game with in regulation, and then misses the 3 that could have tied it at 92. And hey, Caden Shedrick, man, just a senior trying to keep playing meaningful games in March. Like, how many times have you seen that story? So Shedrick just makes 10 free throws, and Trey Johnson, the lottery pick, makes the 3, and there it is. Like the Longhorns move on. I think to Dayton. I think Arkansas is also headed to Dayton after losing the first game. I know that there are bracketologists that have them in that first 4 out category, last 4 buys category. My bad. I'm not going to say that I think that's necessarily wrong, right? But bracketologists that I like better, they've got them creeping towards that last 4 in now, and that's without bid thieves. So I think Arkansas gets last 4 in, and I think they potentially even play Texas in a play-in game. There are no rules on play-in games in the first 4. So conference games are possible and allowed. And I think, that's a thing that can happen, especially with Xavier losing to Marquette yesterday. You have to think Texas is probably safely there. It will be interesting to see whether Arkansas can stay in last 4 buys where I think Oklahoma is, or whether they fall off. Another team that could fall off theoretically is Vanderbilt, who was already sitting at home and didn't play yesterday at all. And obviously the Doors lost to Arkansas, lost to Georgia, lost to Texas, lost 3 in a row kind of going in. But it's hard to see them falling all the way to Dayton with their quality wins. But that's a 6 quad 1 win for Texas. So I think they're in pretty good shape as they move forward. A win today certainly, I think, would maybe even get them out of Dayton. But we have to remember that Don Gavitt said that the entire field was seeded by late Friday afternoon. So there's at least a chance that the last day of the committee really, really factors into things, is what happens tonight on quarterfinal Friday. And that the reality is that the top 16 seats may be fielded. You all should know that there's like a subcommittee that deals specifically with the bubble. That's the way that the selection committee operates. And that subcommittee will certainly be evaluating the games today and making recommendations. But that doesn't mean like the top seeds are necessarily affected. I do think this last 4 buys, last 4 in, first 4 out, all kind of gets affected by those things. But a great win for Texas, and really puts us in a position where the SEC could, as Greg Sankey tweeted, get 14 teams into the field. That actually is now a possibility. I still kind of believe that number is going to be 13, and that one of these teams, whether it's Arkansas or Texas, is going to get heartbroken. I think Oklahoma, the way they played last night against Kentucky, has 0 to worry about. And the way they played down the stretch. I know they didn't close the Ole Miss game. I know they didn't close against Kentucky twice, but they looked like an NCAA tournament team. They have outstanding non-conference wins. I don't care anymore that they're just 6-12 in the league. Again, league record isn't actually a criterion. They have a win over Missouri, a win over Texas, a win over Georgia down the stretch. They're now in the top 40 in KenPom. Predictive metrics were a drag on the Sooners for a while. So I think they're good. I'm sure they would have loved to win last night and just leave 0 doubt at all. But I think they're going to be fine. Those Arizona and Louisville wins have continued to age beautifully. And Arizona hammering Kansas last night, and Louisville winning on the Chucky Hepburn buzzer beater only reaffirms that. Otega Owe, man, 27 points, just filled it up. Mark Pope says he's going to be a coach. What an incredible game by him. And then when he turned that corner, I'll be honest, like, as bleary-eyed as I was and just totally drained and sleep deprived and couldn't even believe that Thursday had bled into Friday morning and that the winner of this game was going to have to play on the same day, I knew Owe was going to make that shot. Like, as soon as he turned the corner, I said, ball game. A rare moment of true confidence for me, I think. But what an exceptional game for Ortega. Look, Kentucky didn't guard as well as they've been guarding lately in this game, right? I mean, yeah, Oklahoma was 9 of 25 from three, but they shot 50% from the field. Kentucky's not disruptive. It's been their first shot defense that's better. The thing that Kentucky did is they rebounded. They won the rebounding battle by 8. And they did make life hard, like I just said, on shooters, right? Like Luke Northwether making a couple three-pointers. Like, okay, people buck the scout in March. But like 4 of Oklahoma's threes were Glenn Taylor Jr. and Luke Northwether. You'll live with that. Like if Jeremiah Fears is 2 for 11 and, Brian Goodine doesn't get a 3 off in 25 minutes, you have done your job. And so I think Kentucky guarded well enough to win, right? And then they got Kobe Bray hot in that building, which is something like I went on Southeastern 16 all the way back at the beginning of the year, picked Kentucky to win the SEC tournament, which seems like kind of a bold take because they were picked like 7th in the league. But really, Atlanta, Nashville, wherever, they're going to have a big fan base. And I felt like a team that shoots as well as Kentucky could get hot in an arena like that. And if that happened, they might be in business. Well, look, Owe went 2 or 3 from deep. Brea went 4 or 7 from deep. Kentucky didn't shoot it great from deep, only 33%. But once they started making them, they really punished the lack of size without Sam Godwin. Finished at the rim well, and they get the 1-point win. So Kentucky advances as well. They get Alabama. Yeah, I mean, we'll see kind of how that goes. I think I talked a little bit about Ole Miss, Arkansas just at the top. I felt terrible for Trayvon Brazil, to be honest. And I'm going to get to Christopher and some of these comments, and I appreciate you guys. I thought that was such a bummer because Brazil was so integral in Arkansas erasing the big deficit and getting the lead and having a chance to win. 15 points, 11 rebounds. Like my heart broke for the kid because he's gone through so much. The 2 ACL injuries, just a nice young man, and to miss those free throws, I think down the stretch had to hurt. You had to feel for him. And then Sean Padua, just the onions, man, to be over 6. Like he got a shout out from Trey Young, the ultimate shooter shoot shout out. Like, yeah, you're over 6, whatever. Give me the ball with the game on the line. And Padua also like uncharacteristic 4 or 5 turnovers, I think it was. Like just a nightmarish game, to be honest. And then none of it matters because he makes that triple and gives them the huge W. So let's talk SEC quarters, right? As great as Thursday was, this could be even better. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, only 2 of the teams playing in this game on Friday aren't ranked in the AP Top 25. Not that matters that much now, but it's crazy that there's 7 NCAA tournament teams, 4 Final Four coaches, 3 maybe of the elite up-and-coming coaches in the country. Rodney Terry, whose job may be safe if they get to Dayton. Got to think it's probably okay for another year. We'll see. Who knows? It's Texas, so maybe it isn't. But it feels like they're probably all right. Christopher asked if there's any truth to Missouri's big man being out. Look, Mark Mitchell and Josh Gray both left the game. Josh Gray with cramps. I think he'll be fine. Mark Mitchell is a bigger deal. He obviously sat on a stationary bike, didn't move. He was really marvelous in the win over Florida early in the year. He is the rare guy that kind of presents matchup problems to be clear, Mark Mitchell presents matchup problems to everyone on earth, right? Because he's 6'9", but he handles the ball and he has guard quickness, especially defensively, and he can get downhill. He got Tommy Houck into foul trouble in the first game. I mean, I know it was fashionable to blame that on referees, but the reality was he, a lot of it had to do with how good Martin Mitchell is. That would be a consequential loss for them. It goes without saying. So we will see. I hope Mark can play. I'd like to see him play down the stretch. But right now, I think questionable. Somebody's asking about my Carolina sweater. Yeah, I mean, I'm a Tar Heel too, and that's not something I hide. Gator, Tar Heel, just that's me. It's Carolina Duke Day, so the other thing about when you're media, like you try to keep it neutral at the arena. So like it's hard because you're watching the Gators, you want them to win, but you also want to be like, the decorum says be objective. So the Carolina sweater is nice cover for that. The big salty Alex Condon. We'll see, man. Kondo first time around against Mizzou, I thought definitely bothered by the waves of bigs, right? Just 8 points for Alex. He did have 6 rebounds. Almost all of the Big Salty's production in the first game came in the second half, like every Florida player. So I think, that's to be seen. I guess we can just talk about this game. Look, when you talk about playing Missouri, there are kind of 3 things that you have to do, right? First, Missouri's elite in transition offense. They're top 10 in the country per synergy in that. You keep Missouri out of transition with ball security and shot selection, first and foremost. So Florida didn't do a great job of that in the first game. They had the 8 first half turnovers. That's the second most they've had this season, other than the Ole Miss game that they just played. And then Florida also forced a bunch of shots for reasons that I'll talk about in a minute. But that allowed Missouri to get 14 points on out of transition in the first half. In Gainesville, and Missouri built up the 19-point lead. So you have to keep them out of transition. The second thing is you have to defend without fouling, which Florida didn't do in the first half last time either. Missouri gets to the free throw line at a prolific rate of 47.2%. That's second in the country. They are elite at getting to the free throw line. Elite. And then finally, you have to be able to handle their changing defenses and just the way they try to keep you out of what you want to do. And I know they're 68 in defensive efficiency, but like Fawcett said on the Patreon preview, they are hard to play against, right? And so Florida's offense primarily is going to be either horn sets, especially horns fade, where the lead guard stretches out the ball screen before hitting the lifted post at the top of the key, and your strong side corner cuts back door. Or it's going to be what Florida calls their read actions, where you use your big in a horns concept look. It's usually a horns look to get your DHO and your zoom actions going to get the ball downhill. And that's where Elijah and Walt thrive. And Florida's bigs are really good at sealing. And so you'd have, if you're 2 bigs, you got Kondo up at the top of it, but your other big seals. Look, even Florida's kind of other action, which is like a pin down into dribble handoff, is similar, because really the idea is just to get north-south there, 2 with your guard, and then you create your pick and pop or your 3-point opportunities. Those are your, that's what the reads are. They come from the guard or the big, and Florida spaces so beautifully that it can work, right? Missouri blows that stuff up. I mean, they blitz ball screens, they switch everything. They push you out towards half court with hedges. They morph into matchup zones to kind of take away the hot hand. The point is, Missouri's defense is predicated on taking you out of the actions you want to run before you can initiate them. So that's a little different than some of the defenses that you'll play against in the SEC, whether you are really fundamentally sound, like defense that doesn't switch much, like Mizzou or like Vanderbilt. Or, you are kind of these forced baseline defenses like Miss State and Ole Miss that Florida's kind of tore apart, or you're dropping everything like Alabama, or you're pressuring the ball and letting your kind of low hold defender, Johnny Broom, guard things down low. Like Missouri does some of all of this stuff but the way they switch it up and the way they blitz ball screens with their length really bothered Florida. And so for Florida, they did not react well to all this. They took bad shots, and bad shots lead to quick rebounds, lead to transition opportunities because you don't have floor balance. And that's how they built that 19-point lead. Florida had just 23 points in the first 14 minutes in Gainesville. So what changed? How did Florida score 59 in the last 26 at a 1.3 points per possession clip? Well, Florida did a couple things that I would expect them to continue doing tonight. They first of all, they punished over pursuit with back cuts, right? Florida has two elite passing bigs, Houck and Kondo. And if I'm them and I feel pressure or I feel a guy creeping up to anticipate a switch, then it needs to be a dribble keep, which Kondo's great at. If Florida sets a ball screen, let's make it a twisted ball screen. If Missouri is going to blow up seals and drives with the low hole guy under the basket, and Gates has done that since FSU, right? And what I mean by that is the low hole guy is a guy, they plant someone under the basket, and then they can rotate either way with that guy and be ready to take on a guy diving into the paint. So fine. If they're going to do that to blow up seals and blow up dribble penetration where Florida's elite at the rim, that's great. Like Florida can dive a guy to the paint and plant shooters in opposite corners. So when Florida dives and the low man hole guy takes him, Florida can kick to the shooter in the opposite corner and punish you that way, whether it's Denzel, who shoots 48.5% on corner threes, or it's Irby, or it's Will Richard. Florida has the roster to punish what Missouri does. It's a matter of doing it. Execution is a different animal than having the roster to do it. Bob Crosby says Tamar Bates is a problem. He is. Like, look, him and Tony Perkins are, I think, two of the most, like, they are not sexy, but they had 45 points on like an outrageously efficient 14 of 22 yesterday and made 14 of 14 free throws. Like, those dudes are just good, right? And they don't care about being all league. They're good players, and you can't let either of them heat up. Perkins is a bully. He could have been Max Bar all bully ball team. And then Tamar, he's a microwave. So those are the guys. You need to force Anthony Robinson to score, right? Make him beat you. Take away Tamar. Caleb Grill, I think, is going to get his. Obviously, you don't want him to go off like he did in the first game. But there it is pick your poison a little bit, right? Because they shoot 37% from three-point range. So you have to kind of deal with that. And then the other area, I think Florida, they should challenge themselves to rebound better. Like, they got out-rebounded on the offensive glass by Missouri. Missouri only did that to 4 teams in SEC play this year, right? Where they won the offensive rebounding battle. They're 296 in the country in defensive rebounding. So I say, to me, those are the big things. And I agree, Christopher. Got to think Florida wanted this matchup. It's a revenge game. Go out and get it. I think it'll be tough to beat the Gators twice for anyone to do that. So, like, if they play Kentucky in the semis, I think also tough, right? But Missouri is definitely, and I said this before the Florida-Missouri loss. I went on Southeastern 16 and I said, hey, I think if Florida drops a home game early in the year, it'll be to Missouri because they match up well, and Dennis Gates he does some stuff defensively that can bother Florida. And I think that's the case, and we'll see if it holds tonight. The other games, I talked a lot about these already on the podcast preview, and I want to keep these under 30, but I will say I think it's going to be a tall order for Texas just playing 50 minutes coming off a rivalry game, their third game in 3 days. Like, the last team you want to see on short rest is Tennessee. Honestly, they're just so physical. They suffocate you. Number 1 defense in the country. I like Tennessee big in that game. I think that's the one lopsided quarterfinal. I think the rest of these are all 10 games or under. And 10 points or under, including Ole Miss Auburn, because Auburn is tasked with beating someone good for a third time. And remember, the game in Oxford between those two teams was back and forth. Like, yes, Auburn led most of the way. But what I mean by back and forth, at least, is Ole Miss was right in that game, almost to the end. Like they were a couple possessions away. And so I think Auburn's highly motivated, but I think Ole Miss is good and they're playing well. And it wouldn't stun me if that game stayed under 10 points too. So I think Florida, Missouri will stay under 10 points. And then I think game of the night is Kentucky, Alabama, where you have an Alabama team that's trying to beat Kentucky for the third time. You have an Alabama team that handled the Wildcats at home, sort of. They got behind, but Kentucky suddenly couldn't get stops. But the game in Rupp was an absolute dogfight. It was 102-97. It was two teams that both scored 1.24 or more per possession. Kentucky led in the first and second halves. Like, I don't know. I think this is one that Kentucky can go grab. But obviously Alabama probably feels pretty confident coming off the win at Auburn, maybe thinking they've turned some things around. And again, I always thought some of the people fading Alabama didn't know what they were talking about. Like, to be quite honest, like their final 7 games were Auburn, Missouri away, Kentucky, Miss State, at Tennessee, Florida at home, at Auburn. Like, they went 3-4 in that stretch, and like a lot of programs in America would have taken 3-4 in that stretch. So, like, I don't think we need to get too carried away with deep concern for them. Bob asked if a 2 in the South is better than the 1 in the West. No, I don't think so. Like, first of all, I think Auburn is the 1 in the South, so I don't think Florida's going to the South. But I would have Florida over Houston. I don't know if the committee would, but I think if Florida wins tonight, they have a really compelling argument for that. It'd be nice if Houston lost if you're a Gator fan. But I think Florida's 2 like kind of marquee wins that are better than anything Houston has. And in fact, to at least one team that Houston lost to in Alabama. Like, I think the committee might value those things more than some people were laying on and talking about. And like the predictive metrics are just so similar. Like, Houston's very, very, very good. But Evan Maya is the only predictive metric where there's a huge gap between Florida and Houston. And Maya didn't have Florida in the top 30 in the preseason. Like, I think there are some flaws in Evan's kind of setup that he's got to tweak, particularly the way he evaluates things defensively. Compared to Torvik and KenPom, it's hard to explain that wide gap. And it also makes me chuckle when I see like Evan Maya talking about, well, Florida's they haven't overachieved, or Florida has met expectations. And it's like, no, Evan, you had Florida out of the top 30 in the preseason. So like, don't come now with your data that says they've met expectations. It's not accurate. It's not an accurate representation of what your representation was. So, yeah, we'll see. So my picks today, I do like the high seeds in every game but Kentucky, Alabama. I'm going Wildcats and Kentucky, Alabama. I think they are headed to the semifinals. So those are my picks. Yeah, go Gators. Keep attacking closeouts.